I'm Paul Baxendale, and welcome to blog post number 11. This week we're going to be looking at Mr. B's gym, the story of how I started my first ever gym and what turned out to be one of the greatest periods in my life to date. As each day arises, welcome it as the very best day of all and make it your own possession. We must seize what flees. Seneca. There are times in life when you have a dream, and despite how difficult or even impossible that dream may appear, I believe it is life's way of telling you in which direction you need to go. Now, not all of our dreams will come true for various reasons, perhaps through lack of true desire, which ultimately shows itself in you not taking every possible step to ensure that it does happen. Or sometimes other factors outside of your control stop that dream from coming to fruition. Now, when this does happen, when life just throws something at you randomly, something completely out of your control, then I believe it is a signal that you were heading in the right direction, but only for life to then show you a new purpose and a new dream. For you see, goals and your ultimate purpose in life is never set on a linear purpose, on a linear course. It never goes from A to B in a straight line. It always goes looking much more like a zigzag, where you go from A to B and then to C, but then perhaps to F, then G, and at some point you may find that your true purpose shows itself. And it is not always what you originally thought, but you had to go through all the other stages in order to see your final destination. If you ask any successful person, they will more than likely tell you about their journey that went exactly like that, rather than the straight line that everybody thinks is how life works. This tells us two things. Firstly, often what you think your purpose in life isn't what you thought it was at the beginning. And secondly, each path you take is never wrong unless you begin to go downwards. But rather, it's you going through various stages until the moment when your purpose will reveal itself. Indeed, if you find anything in human life better than justice, self-control, courage, I tell you, if you can see anything better than this, turn to it heart and soul and take full advantage of this greater good you found. Marcus Aurelius. I was working in an insurance company, and I had done since I'd left school. But as my bodybuilding career began to rise and my dedication to becoming a professional bodybuilder was almost all-consuming, then I began to become dissatisfied at work. It was a great job. I really enjoyed it and I worked with great people. And even though I was able to compete with no problems at all working there in terms of training times, eating my meals and getting enough sleep, I also began to think that I would love to own my own business and to try and grow a business from scratch and make it successful if I could. Now, obviously, the business I really wanted was to own a gym. And the thought of having my own gym really got me excited. I planned roughly how it would look, what the atmosphere would be like, spit and sawdust, very hardcore, and how I could promote it in the area, as the town I was living in didn't have a hardcore gym in it at the time. And I had a feeling that I could attract both men and women into the environment if the gym was renowned for getting results. But how was I going to go about setting one up? Well, perhaps fate intervened, or I was simply lucky. But the gym where I was currently training was struggling. But they had invested in another small unit in a railway estate as a more hardcore area to train in. So members were literally going from the main gym to the other small unit just across the estate when they wanted to squat or deadlift. Now, the owner was in it to make money. and he saw the writing on the wall as far as the main gym was concerned. So I knew he was going to be doing a runner shortly, as the bills were stacking up and I knew the numbers weren't adding up. So I offered to buy the small unit from him. Now he wanted £8,000 for it and for all the equipment that was in it. I offered him 4 and the deal was done. It had a smallish floor, but the beauty was they had built a mezzanine floor, and the guy who made gym equipment in Swindon, Roy Bunce, who had a showroom above his workshop, kitted the whole of the gym with all of his equipment and his machines, free weights, cardio, leaving the downstairs for all the free weights and squat rack, deadlift platform and Smith's machine, flat and incline benches and a T-bar row. It was perfect. I needed nothing else. It was all there. Roy, the equipment maker, did make me a couple of extra pieces of equipment just because I wanted them, but it had everything I needed in it to be able to train to the maximum to become a pro. It was a bit of a steal, but the guy who owned the big gym 3 blocks down, he soon disappeared from town, owing the estate owner quite a large sum of money, and a gym full of unhappy clients too. Now, the new owners soon came in to buy the old gym, but by then many clients had come over to my place, and they stayed, with numbers adding to my members list daily at the start. My name had attracted nearly all the top bodybuilders in town, although not all. It's surprising, or maybe it's not, that whenever a gym is owned by a big dog, the biggest bodybuilder in town, then often other bodybuilders don't or won't train there because they like to feel like they are the big guy in the gym and their egos can't take it that somebody else may be bigger and better than them. It's funny, I had already seen it happen at Temple Gym. What shocked me about Temple, well, the members, is there were some big boys and some big girls who were trained there, but most of the other competitive bodybuilders in Birmingham trained at other gyms. I couldn't work it out to make any sense. Seriously, you have Mr. Olympia training in your town and he owns a gym, and yet you choose to train somewhere else? I remember asking one of the members about it, and they said that they preferred the equipment, or that the location was difficult for them to get to, or whatever about the other gym they trained at. I was stunned, really. Here we have again a case of not wanting it badly enough. These people, supposedly top bodybuilders, weren't prepared to drive 15 or 20 minutes across town and would rather train at the gym 5 minutes away for convenience. And here I was, driving 2 hours a day there and 2 hours a day back again, 3 times a week just to train at Temple Gym with Dorian. I remember I couldn't understand what was wrong with these people. Didn't they want to be around Dorian and soak up the atmosphere and the intensity of the best bodybuilder in the world? Apparently not. But there was more to it, as I later found out when I began to meet other competitive bodybuilders from Birmingham, and I asked them why they didn't train at Temple Gym. They said, the changing rooms are disgusting there. Or they said, the opening hours they're just not long enough for us. Or they didn't find Dorian friendly. Well, if you're going to go in there with an attitude and an ego, then no, I don't think Dorian would have been particularly friendly to you. He wouldn't have been not friendly, but he probably would have given them some of the dry humour, just like he gave me the very first time I went in there too. When I said, hello, and he said to me, hi, good condition, lad, you just need some muscle. Now, I wasn't offended by that, because I knew he was right. And I also knew that he was honest enough to tell me straight to my face that he was probably a man who told the truth about everything, especially things like coming into a show, and when you ask him, how am I doing? What do you want? Do you want one of your gym buddies to tell you you look shredded and on when in reality you're 6 weeks out? I would rather have the truth, but then that is why not all the bodybuilders didn't train at Temple. They didn't want the truth. They wanted the smoke blown up their backsides. Well, you don't win big shows that way, and you definitely won't ever reach pro potential either. What if someone despises me? Let me see to it, but I will see to it that I won't be found lying or saying something contemptible. What if someone hates me? Let them see to that, but I will see to it that I'm kind and good-natured to all, and prepared to show even the hater where they went wrong, not in a critical way or to show off my patience, but genuinely and usefully. Marcus Aurelius. So, not all the bodybuilders came to my gym, but all the good ones did. And then all the members began to feel like a family. As the gym went through its first few weeks and then months, the place was just thriving. More and more people showed up after hearing about the gym from someone else. Word of mouth, it was fantastic. And people were starting to come from further afield. They started coming from villages and towns half an hour away to train every day. And within 6 months, it was the best gym in the area. We would roll up the big roller shutter doors when the sun was out and have people walking by, watching all the guys and the girls training. I played the music very loud. I had a business next door. Now, so I was respectful to them. So between kind of 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock during the day, I kept the music reasonably sensible. But after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was pumped right up. AC/DC, Slayer, Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Bon Jovi, even some pre-army Elvis was played in there. And everyone was allowed to bring in their own CDs. Yes, I even had a CD player, even fancier than Temple Gym now. So they could bring along their own favourite music to train with, as long as no one else objected or someone else had their own CD in first. It was perfect. Most any night of the week, you would find a line of Harley Davidsons parked up outside the gym, alongside American cars and hot rods. It was the place for crazy people, outsiders, who found their home in this one place where they could escape to heaven or to hell as they trained their asses off, high intensity, one and all. I think it's because that was how I trained. Everyone else copied my lead and also went super high intensity. No, not everyone was serious about bodybuilding or competing, but they all loved to train hard, and it became almost a rite of passage that you had to train hard, otherwise you didn't belong there. Seriously, despite the lack of changing facilities, there was no shower, just a toilet where you could change if you needed to. But I still had plenty of women members who came to train, and not one of them ever complained about the lack of facilities. I guess it was a case of you saw what it was like when you first turned up, so if you didn't like it, you wouldn't have signed up in the first place. They knew it was a super hardcore place to train and be around super cool men and women. I was with my wife then when I opened up, and she was pregnant with my very first child, our very first child, my eldest daughter, who's now 24. So it was going to be a difficult period, as there was no more 8 till 4 for me or 9 till 5 hours. It was going to be 12 hours a day, every day, with Saturday and Sunday opening hours from 10 until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which was a lot of how gyms opened back at weekends back then. It allowed me some time at home with my wife as she got bigger and bigger, and I began to get more and more excited about the prospect about having a child. Life was getting serious now. Let fate find us prepared and active. I was also competing during this time, so I was often dieting for shows whilst working 12-hour days, getting up at 5 in the morning to do my cardio. I had a bike at home, or alternatively I would power walk, And then I would prepare all of my meals for the day before heading down to the gym to open up. There were always people waiting for me as I turned up after the 10-minute walk from my house down to the gym. But as soon as the door was unlocked, the shutters rolled up, I put the CDs on, they would just go straight into their training. As I went around checking all the equipment, just making sure everything was running smoothly, every cable was perfect and every weight was in place, which it always was. I never had a problem with people not putting their weights away, as it was one of the only 2 rules in the whole place. Number 1, you put your weights away. And number 2, you respected every other member as you would like to be respected yourself. It was as simple as that. 2 rules. Apart from that, anything else went. You could scream as much as you wanted. If you couldn't put down your dumbbells safely, then you could throw them down, as long as you trained like a beast with the insanity and the intensity of Conan the Barbarian being dragged from the hot fires of hell. Yeah, people loved it. They knew there was gym etiquette. And the fact that they used to say to people, we only have 2 rules, it was kind of like an indication of how hardcore and crazy it was in there. And yet, these people, my members, my family, they were my family. I had young kids coming in. I always showed them around and kind of took them under my wing so they were training safely and properly. I remember one young guy, he was 14 when he first came to my gym. And now I see photos of his grown-up kids and he's still training. Evenings were when I really had my fun, because I always trained earlier on in the day around 10:30 to 11, about the same time as Dorian used to do. So the rest of the day was devoted to my members, and I made sure the evenings were really high energy with the music screaming loud and every member training themselves to the edge of consciousness. Brutal, but they seemed to love it. I remember hot summer nights when the roller doors were fully rolled up and the music was blaring out of the gym. My wife and my young little baby would come down for a visit as the members were absolutely crushing it inside. The members of the big gym, just 3 blocks down, they all had to walk right past my gym to go to theirs. And they would often stop and watch all the crazy training going on in there. And then they would often ask a few questions, and then the next day they'd often come in and join up themselves. The new owners of the big gym obviously weren't too happy with this, and they came and they asked me, would I turn the music down, please, as they could hear it from their gym. I said, hi, it's nice to meet you. But no, that's not happening, I'm afraid. You see, the members here love the music pumped up really loud, as it makes them train harder. Would you like to come in and maybe have a session yourself? The strange thing was, within a year, I was the owner of that big gym 3 blocks down. But there was never anything quite like those days at Mr. B's. There was a higher turnover in the big gym, yes, more members, but more overheads and more things to go wrong and need fixing. No, Mr. B's was the best gym I've ever owned. Although the last gym I had, Peak Physique, that wasn't bad. That was maybe some 10 years later and still hardcore, but the industry had changed and so had the people. Or maybe it was I that had changed. Whenever you take offence at someone's wrongdoing, immediately turn to your own similar failings, such as seeing money as good, or pleasure, or a little fame, whatever form it takes. By thinking on this, you'll quickly forget your anger. Again, Marcus Aurelius. Dieting was perfect at the gym. I remember the first show I did when I had the gym was a British qualifier where Sean Dinosaur Davis was going to be one of my fellow competitors in the heavyweight class. Now, Paul Borison and Kerry Case had advised me to get sliced and diced like I never had been before if I was going to go up against Sean, because he was an absolute monster, and there was no way on earth that I was going to be able to stand toe to toe next to him on stage and try and match him for muscle size. There was no way it was going to happen. So we decided the only way I could possibly beat him was if he came in too soft and I was freaky, sick, shredded, as Dorian always told me to do. So Paul had put me on a keto diet, 8 meals a day of 300 grams turkey breast, broccoli, and a half a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil for every meal. Talk about tough dieting. Although after the first few days, my energy levels actually increased and actually felt pretty good going in. However, I was still training with very high intensity and doing cardio twice a day. I was beginning to look shredded in a good way. I began to get tired though, very tired. So I then put a mattress behind the counter and a pillow, and every afternoon during the quiet spell between 2 and 4 o'clock, I had to sleep, leaving a sign on the counter saying, "Please help yourself to a protein shake, leave the money on the counter, thank you." And people came in, got on with their workouts, still with the music on. They would have a shake afterwards and they'd leave the money, as I asked, right on the counter. And I'd never woken up once. I was so tired. Then as the show got nearer, I began to see details on my physique that I'd never seen before. I'd nearly always been able to get my glutes out shredded, always. It wasn't difficult for me. But my upper back seemed to be the real problem area for me, where the body fat would stay right to the very last minute. So on Kerry and Dorian's advice, I kept going lower and lower and got freakier and freakier. My face was like a skull. My eyes back in the head like hollows, and there was a flap of skin that I still have today from my nose to my mouth, and that just appeared. And that last bit of body fat on my face was then gone. But how was my back? Well, I couldn't see it. Back then, I'd never even thought about getting different mirrors to be able to, so I could see my back. So I would always drive down the road to Newbury to my friend Graham Black's gym, because I knew Graham I could always trust him to tell me the truth. I went down to Graham's gym and he literally freaked out. He turned the music off in his gym, gathered everyone around so they could take a look at me. He was that impressed. Now, coming from Graham, that was a huge compliment. Graham had won the Universal or the NABBA Worlds, one of the two, very recently back then. And he had got into amazing condition. So there was only one more thing to do. Drive to Birmingham and then drive on to Manchester to see Dorian and then to Kerry Kays. I first went to see Dorian and he took a look at me and deadpan, as he always said, "Another 4 pounds, Paul, and you're there." Shit, another 4 pounds? I was dying here. Where was I going to get 4 pounds from? There was no fat left on me. Well, I suppose that was fat and water, so maybe I could do it. So up to Manchester I went, and I went through all my compulsory poses in front of Kerry. And again he smiled and said, "Looking very good, Paul. 4 pounds should do it." So he said 4 pounds should get you Dorian ready. That's what he said. My most trusted friends were telling me I had 4 pounds still to come off, so another 4 pounds came off. The reason why we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth is so we might listen more and talk less. Zeno. During those last 2 weeks, I was on the bike at home doing cardio one morning, as I brought a bike from the gym to do early morning cardio at home. And around 5:20 a.m. one morning, my wife said later she just heard this huge thump on the upstairs floor. Yes, I'd obviously let my blood sugars just drop too low, and being so tired as well, I either just blacked out or I'd fallen asleep for a second on the bike and fallen off and found myself on the floor with a very sore side. Of course it was sore. I had no body fat to protect anything. So even sitting on the bike became impossible from then, as there was no fat on my backside either. And even my feet were getting painful walking around on hard surfaces, where the padding on my feet had gone. because that's body fat, and even that body fat had gone too. There was nowhere else for it to come from. It was gone. What a diet, what a show. And no, I didn't beat Sean Davis. But what a condition I was in. The best ever until I retired and then made a comeback. For some reason, when I came back from retirement, I found getting very lean easier, much easier than when I was younger for some reason. The greatest portion of peace of mind is doing nothing wrong. Those who lack self-control live disorientated and disturbed lives. Anyway, back to the gym. Now, I met some of my best ever friends at the gym. The young lad is now a father and he has a successful business down south. Hi, John. And then there was Biz, my best buddy to this day, Simon Bisley, the artist who worked for DC Comics, producing all the characters that we love, Batman, Conan, Lobo, and all the rest. Well, the day Simon came into the gym for the first time, I had no idea who he was. He arrived on a Harley, but not any normal Harley Davidson. This was a stripped, bright back, so only the skeleton of the bike was left. It was awesome. He rocked up to the counter with a big grin and said he wanted to train. I said, great. And then I went through all the prices with him. He said, yeah, that's fine. Could he train today and he'll fix me up later on in the week? As he'll be down most days, he doesn't normally carry cash on him. Well, now that's not something I would normally have done, but there was something about this guy I just liked. He was crazy just like me. I knew it. He trained hard. And then he asked if I wanted to have a go on his bike. He said, we'll just ride up and down the road from the estate quickly. I needed no second asking. So on the back of the bike I got and down we roared. There's nothing feeling more badass than two built big guys on Harley Davidsons roaring up and down the road. Man, that showed me what Simon was really truly made of and why he's the greatest artist perhaps living today. After a few months, Biz became my full-time training partner as I went into off-season mode, which was just as strict as pre-contest. It's just the amounts of food were bigger and the weights we lifted were heavier. Now, Biz was the best training partner that I ever had, obviously apart from Dorian and Kenny. As I got to know him, I began to realise just how gifted the man was. Not only was he a world-class artist, perhaps the best in the world, but he also had a passion for life, for bodybuilding, and for taking the most out of every day that we'd been given. As for his training, well, he was just as intense and insane as I was. Super heavy, super intense, but with strict form, making sure all of his muscle fibers were being used and fatigued during every workout. It was a training partnership made in heaven, or maybe made in Helheim or the Greek underworld, where all warriors must meet their dragons and their greatest fears. I think so. God laid down this law, saying, if you want some good, get it from yourself. Epictetus. He would ride up around midday for our workout, and then we would prepare for the workout that was to come, going over each exercise, how much weight we were going to use, how many reps we wanted to get. We would do that every single session. Things got crazy when we started, all hyped up on adrenaline and often the ECA mix as well. We would proceed into a warm-up, preparing the body for what was to come. Normally leg day was always the biggest training day of the week. But with Biz, it seemed like every single damn training day was the biggest day of the week in terms of intensity. The other members soon got used to Biz. They soon got used to Biz and I going balls to the wall intensity, just crazy training, leaving the gym floor almost free for us to allow us to use whatever equipment we wanted. They were awesome members. I remember one chest day when Biz was crazy pumped up. I think his pre-workout mix that day was a tad bit more than ephedrine, let's say. Anyway, we started off with incline barbell presses and then moved on to incline dumbbell flies, which I was very strong at back then. So for my working set, normally around 75 or 80 pounds. For some reason this day, Biz decided he was going to use the same weights as I had. Just despite him being a lot lighter than I was and not as strong as I was, he still wanted to use them. I tried to advise him against it, but he was adamant he was going to do it. So up he went. On the first rep down, we both heard a ripping sound and he dropped the dumbbell to the floor. I knew he'd torn a pec. He didn't complain at all, rather just angry that he couldn't or shouldn't continue. But then the next week, he came back in, and strangely, the pec hadn't seemed to have torn at all. But it had what felt like steel wires underneath the skin where his pec was. Now it was then I began to wonder whether Biz was a true mere human being, or whether he was some type of Terminator 3 with titanium fibres where his musculature should have been. Now Biz would often sit there and just watch me train. He would be looking out for how the body moved and which muscles were working when the body got in certain positions. He was studying our movements for his art. And if you check out his artwork on Simon Bisley, just Google him up on Google Images, Simon Bisley, then you'll see what I mean. His ability to capture the musculature on the characters he drew and draws is one of the defining aspects of his skill as an artist. Most of his characters are either huge muscular men or male beasts, or big shapely women with muscles, shapes and curves in all the right places. He even brought in some of his artwork with which to decorate the gym. Imagine that, original Bisley pieces on the gym walls. So there I had them next to the photos, the big posters of Arnold, Dorian, NASA, and obviously next to the leg press and the squat rack, what else but a huge poster of Tom Platz's legs from the front and from the back. I guess if they didn't inspire anyone to do their legs properly, then nothing would. There's so many characters to tell you about from Mr. B's gym. There was Slim, there was Dr. John. Now, there's nothing for it, but I've got to leave this post here for now and put it up as a part 1. And then I'll do a part 2 on Mr. B's gym with more stories of more crazy things that happened in there. There's also the range of supplements that I sold from the gym, and those special supplements that I always carried in a briefcase under the counter for those people who wanted the French, Spanish and Italian supplements that you couldn't get here in the UK. Oh, those were the days. So next time I'll tell you more about the members, the crazy workouts we used to do, the leg press sets of 100 reps with 4 people all working together, each taking their turn and no one being allowed to get up before they'd done 100 reps. Now this was for no lightweight either. There was plenty of 25 kilo weights on that leg press, and you had to get 100 reps even if it took you all day, no matter how much you screamed, cried, whimpered, nothing. You didn't get out until you were done. There's a very funny story about one of those days, but that's going to wait until next time. So, Mr. B's was the name of my first gym, obviously. At the time, everybody knew me as Mr. B, hence the name. It was a dream that at one point I never thought that I would achieve. But by working hard, making my own fortune and fate give me a little help too, there I was, living the life I had dreamt about. Was it perfect and all I could have wished for? Perhaps at first, but it's surprising how once you reach one goal, that you automatically switch your mind to the next, more difficult one. And you hope that it's leading to you ultimately heading towards your real purpose in the world. What was my purpose going to be? Running a gym? I very much doubted it, even then. but it was teaching me where my gifts were and what I loved doing, helping and teaching others. Whether about getting big and shredded, losing body fat and improving your shape, or something totally unrelated, which was often the case. As you see, gym owners, members tell you their problems, often their most intimate problems. They can't tell anyone else. They trust you. It was a huge compliment that someone would trust me in that way. And especially when I began to take on personal training clients, then I found that they really sought my advice or just wanted me to listen to them or to what was troubling them. Everything from relationship issues to job worries and everything else in between you could imagine. But that too, that's a blog post for another day as well. Let me leave you today with a quote about washing away the dust of life, that you are always so much more than the problems and the troubles you face in life. From Marcus Aurelius again. Watch the stars in their courses and imagine yourself running alongside them. Think constantly on the changes of the elements into each other, for such thoughts wash away the dust of earthly life. Thank you once again for sharing your time with me. Until we next see each other, never forget that you are so much more than any problem that may come your way. No matter how large it may seem to you right now, you know what's inside of you. You've been there. You've given more than this before, and you can do it again and again. Dig deep and drive for those 3 extra reps within, and you will make it. You will honour yourself. You will give yourself the nobility and the virtue you demand from yourself. Never let one set slide, not one action go astray. Watch every thought that comes into your head and meet it with reason and courage. As much as I know I can, so too you can. So until next week, have a good week. Goodbye.